I was always very.
My brother-in-law was a judge.
I call to order this meeting of the Park and Rec Commission on the 14th of November 2018. Roll call?
Fryer here.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Needham here.
Marmion here.
Cavino present.
Boligoff present.
Boggs present.
Move on to adoption of tonight's agenda. Any deletions, additions, or changes to tonight's agenda?
I move that we accept the agenda as submitted.
Any seconds?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The approval of the minutes from last month, October 10th, 2018. Any corrections, additions to the minutes of last meeting?
No, I move to approve the minutes of October 10th. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any citizens' communications?
I think he.
Well, he's the next agenda item.
Oh.
No citizen communications. All right, let's move on to tonight's business. For presentations under public art installation, we have a public art presentation. Take it away.
Through the chair, just before you start, if I could maybe review what it is that we're doing and
Please.
why we're having this, both for people on the commission, so that you understand where we are in the process, and also for people who are watching this. So this is part of the public arts ordinance. There are two different ways that public arts monies are spent. One is when a rebuild is done, if it's under $5 million, that mandates that money goes automatically into the in lieu of fund. Above $5 million, the developer has the option to choose their own artist and present their own art installation, and that is the situation that is here before us. This has gone down. We've met the artists. We've had 2 meetings in the Public Art Committee. The Public Art Committee has approved it. The implementation guidelines now mandate that comes for our approval, and if indeed we approve it, then it moves up. We would put that recommendation to the City Council. The City Council would then approve it. So that is what we're doing here tonight. And sorry to jump in there before you start your presentation, but I want to make sure everybody understands what it is that we're doing here tonight. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is it best I speak into the microphone for any recording?
Yes, please.
My name is Dan McCauley. I work for a company called High Tech Construction Management and Design, and I'm a project manager consultant for the tenant, Sangamo Incorporated, that is taking the space at 7,000 Marina Boulevard. Sangamo elected, since the valuation is over the $5 million for the TI project that they're doing in that facility, they elected to utilize the art funds to put a sculpture on the property with the landlord's consent and with the appropriate body's approval. So I'd like to take some time here tonight just to explain what they're planning on doing, and then certainly can answer any questions you all might have. Unfortunately, the artist who has been at the 2 art advisory meetings could not be here tonight, and one of the key client contacts is also traveling for business this week, so it fell to me to stand in and share this with you. The artist actually prepared this presentation, so I'm going to scroll through it. This is the first few pages are a little bit about the artist studio and their unique approach to their art. So I believe you all, I see a number of the red booklets, which is their portfolio, recent portfolio, and you'll see in flipping through it that there's no one size fits all for the types of art that they come up with. It's very unique to their customers. So, and that's exactly what they've done for Sangamo as well, that we'll get into here. So just real briefly, here's some examples that, again, they're in some of the booklets here of the art that they've done. They're a little bit on their artist, the team, the studio, and here's some examples of large-scale work, similar in scale to what we're proposing for Sangamo. So I won't spend too much time on it, but it gives you an idea. What you'll see in a number of these, even though it's a different answer or a different solution for all of their clients, They use a lot of materials that are very durable, and we'll talk about that a little bit tonight as well. The dichroic glass and also the stainless steel materials, you'll see that implemented in Sangamo's design. So these are some representative examples. One of the things I'll point out here that we've tried to emulate in the sketch for Sangamo, but you see in the real life picture, the dichroic glass and how it plays with the different shades of sunlight and even the different light conditions. We have north-facing light we'll be dealing with, but it really does kind of evolve throughout the day, and we thought that was an important feature because the piece of art itself will be fixed. It'll give idea of movement and light. So just a little bit about the site and the challenge. We're taking into account a lot of different factors here between the actual location on the north side of the building at 7000 Marina Boulevard. It faces the water. It's in a grassy knoll type area, so it plays off the land, the water, and of course a beautiful backdrop of the building and the surrounding sky and San Bruno Mountain and all that good stuff. So we've got the Bay Trail right there to take into account. So these are some of the challenges that the artist was working with as he was coming up with this piece. So again, I won't get too into this, but this is all his presentation to show you kind of the things that he's gone through to come up with his design solution. I will explain a few minutes here that we've gone through the exploration and the research and the discussions with the client on some very specific ideas to help come up with this concept. So we're in this conceptual development, which is what we're presenting to you phase, and then ultimately, pending approval, we'll get into the refinement fabrication. As mentioned, this would have to go before City Council, and the next available date for that would be in January. And then once that's done, we'll go through a formal permit submission process for the engineering of the piece. So the inspiration, Sangamo is a life science company, and what they do is represented in the 4 illustrations here. They're a gene therapy, gene editing type company. That's really what they're focused on. They have a specific technology that they're using, and their ultimate goal is to help make people's lives better by being able to go in and potentially alter genes that are, how do I want to put it, problem genes, if you will, to be able to go in and edit them to help eradicate disease that way, as opposed to, say, somebody that has a genetic disposition to a cancer, just blasting them with chemotherapy. They actually want to go in and fix the underlying genetic issue. So that's represented in some of these graphics here, which are graphics that are actually found on their website. So here's the piece that the artist has developed for them, and it's a series of, going backwards here, these 4 different pillars within the company, but within the one internal company, there's 4 different discs around a central spine, if you will. And I see this is actually the updated sketch from last week that's been incorporated. So this is a combination of stainless steel for the support members that would hold up as far as weathering and everything else at the site, and then this dichroic glass. And at this time I want to go ahead and pass around this sample that the artist left last week. So I don't know if everyone's seen this. So it's actually a laminated piece of glass that is pretty strong because of the lamination, but it has an application on both sides of it. And so when you might have seen this in different art installations around the Bay Area, it's not, it's become more popular because it plays the light in a certain way that, depending on where the light is at the different times of the day, where the sun is shining, it'll cast these shadows and also reflect the light. And these are 2 different coatings, one on either side, that help provide the different color that will reflect the light and reflect these shadows. The artist has chosen a blue-green piece of glass, and what's neat about it is it kind of mimics the colors on the site between the green grass, the blue water, and then the blue sky there in front of the building. from a maintenance standpoint, this is easily maintained. He has designed this structure, this sculpture, such that if there was ever any vandalism or anything like that, the pieces could be taken out in smaller sections as opposed to having to take down the entire sculpture and replace it. Here's an example of what those hues might show in a nighttime lighted situation with the building behind it. Part of the discussion last week with the art committee was whether or not we would be providing site lighting, and that is a goal of the client. So we'd have something along the Bay Trail for folks walking during the day to enjoy, but also to help light up at night. The size of the sculpture is roughly a 15-foot sphere, if you will, to give you an idea of height. And as we go through the final fabrication and engineering, that may change a little bit up or down. But that's the goal at this time, and it would sit on a concrete base or plinth. And then, as you see, we've have some landscaping at the base of it, a circle that would mimic at least the sphere of the sculpture, so that we could prevent it from being impacted by landscaping services or a gardener or anything like that. And this is just another representation just to show the four different spokes. So one of them is actually coming directly out at you in this image, and then the other three overlap. I think that's the end of the graphics. So with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions you might have, or not sure the formal process here, but.
Any questions from commissioners? I have a couple of questions. You talked
Sure.
about the 15 feet was the height. That include the base or exclude the base?
That's the sculpture itself. So the base would be, I think, let me see graphically. He's got it just as probably a foot or 18 inches off the ground.
Okay. And then, so in this, the picture we're looking at right now is what we're looking at the front. Is that the trail?
Yes.
So how close to water, how close to trail will it be installed? Any ideas yet?
So the picture doesn't do it full justice, but the prow of the building, the north point of the building is literally due north on the compass point, and from there you can maybe see it a little bit in the background here. There's a little bit of a rock outcrop around the base of the building, and then we have probably 100 to 150 feet of landscaping till you get to the Bay Trail. The first few feet of that drop off pretty quickly, so we would probably be about halfway in that grass landscaping. So we won't be right up against the trail where people would be inclined to go up and touch it and what have you, but we would be probably halfway down that grass slope where it starts to flatten out. And that does put us in line for a review with the BCDC as well, the Bay Area Coastal Commission, because we'll be within their 100-foot of the coastline. There are a couple of benches, and it's not shown in the graphic here, but there's a couple of benches right there on the trail where the trail has a wide spot. So people would be able to sit and look at the sculpture, but again, the goal would be that they wouldn't necessarily run up to it and impact it.
Thank you. Yeah, the next question I was going to ask is about people being able to just sit and kind of, enjoy the day as the light, again, it's summertime, as the sun moves, you might see different reflections, and if people could enjoy it, and you said there's benches, so I appreciate that
Sure.
information. Any other?
Yes, I just did want to call the Commission's attention to page 26 of the handout, and something that I found interesting in the presentation we had last week, which is the budget for this. When we went through it in the Public Arts Committee meeting, I was surprised at how much went into materials and labor for fabrication. But it should be noted that the total amount for this public arts installation is $300,000. This would be the second public art thing that we have in the pipeline. The other one being the public art installation for the new public library. But likely this will be the first one that is unveiled, as the library is completed next summer, and this would be completed in the late spring. Is that? We don't really know.
That's our goal. So I believe just working with the basis of approval from the city council in January, we would then start the engineering process, which will take some time, the structural engineering process to get all the, not just the base element and anchoring it into the soil properly, but also the connections of the stainless steel parts to, and again, as I mentioned, this isn't a pointer, is it? It is. Oh, it is. So if something were to happen to one of these pieces, this piece of glass could be replaced as opposed to this entire wheel of glass, right? So each one of these connections will have to be designed and fabricated, with the goal being that kind of a one or two type of connection could serve the whole sculpture. So you're not designing different connections all the way through, but one or two types of connections, the spokes, if you will, to the circle, and then the connection between those spokes and the glass pieces themselves. So that engineering has to happen, would be submitted for a building permit for structural review. That takes a little bit of time, and then as soon as we get through that process, the goal would be fabrication and installation. We have behind here in the building, and I didn't really go into too much detail in that, but right now the tenant is undertaking a massive renovation of that space. All 5 floors, they're putting in new office environments and all hands room that will actually span. We've put a deck in above the former open first floor atrium space to basically raise it a floor, and then we have a deck going from the 2nd floor up to the 3rd floor in a staired or stepped seating arrangement that'll be an all hands space. We're also putting in laboratories on the upper floors, and on the 1st floor, where it was part of the open atrium space, we're putting in a production facility for their science. And we're upgrading the basement with a number of utility systems to support what they're going to be doing in that production space. So there's a lot of work going on. Our target is to be moved into a couple of the floors by the end of the year. Those would be office-only floors. And we've signed a contract with the city that this piece of artwork be tied to the final occupancy, not the temporary occupancy. So our goal is to be in that early to mid-spring time frame, because we want to tie that to the final occupancy of the building. And we also want to take advantage of the fact that we have a contractor on site that can help install the base and install there's some light fixtures in the ground here, so they could help us wire that to provide light to the structure themselves. So we want to take advantage of them while they're on site and mobilized. So long explanation for saying we want to be done in the springtime.
You mentioned a couple times that you were hoping to keep it far enough off the trail so that people weren't tempted to go up to it. So how fragile is it?
It's not, actually. That piece that I passed around, and we had this discussion. I wish the artist was here because he could explain a little better, but it is laminated and it's safety glass. It's not like you can go up to it with, I think the term he used was a baseball bat, saying that, you could hit it and it wouldn't necessarily damage it, but if you hit it enough times, or if you hit it with something sharp enough, you could potentially damage it. At that point, it's truly vandalism.
Oh, right.
There's insurance that would cover replacement. And
But
so,
kids climbing on it, that's not going to be an issue? Because I can see already in my brain little kids running by with their parents.
the goal would not be an issue. I would hope that there's rocks on the other side of the trail down to the water. You have kids climbing on rocks and all of that sort of thing. They could be jumping off the benches there. Ideally, people aren't thinking, "Oh, I'll just go climb all over this sculpture." But
I just mean it's
yeah.
possible that it could happen. So I'm just asking. It's not going to. There's no issue as far as people climbing on it. It's not going to.
Oh no, the artist, and I didn't go into great detail on him. He's done a good job of putting a number of pages in here about his practice. But he's designed works all around the Bay Area, as well as domestically, and even some international items. And we've talked to him very, very intently about how powerful the wind can be out here when you have storms come through, and that this can't be something that, and he fully understands it, and the engineering will be such that, if somebody were to climb on it, it's not going to topple over or anything like that. If somebody's intent on doing something more, sinister to it, then that's where, hopefully that's not the
Yeah,
case.
that's not.
Yeah, we do recognize from a number of times being out in front of the building on this side, so most of the construction activity is all staged on the other side in the parking lot, and it's all fenced off. But a number of times we've gone out to this side of the building, and that trail gets heavily used morning, noon, late afternoon, evening, and it's fantastic. We've been blessed, I guess, although we need the rain, we've been blessed with a lot of beautiful days out at the site this year, and we see just foot traffic left and right, people walking dogs. So I think it's going to be a very nice piece to have to help enhance that experience along the trail.
It looks beautiful. It's cool.
So, any other questions?
I have a question. It's mentioned in the maintenance plan. It's just very little maintenance and it's outdoor use. As far as like colors of the glass, does it usually fade? I don't, like with the other previous artwork, have these colors faded, or have they been like colors pop? Are they still intact after a couple of years?
So I do believe they hold their color because of the lamination process of the application on either side of the glass. That's what helps give it some of its strength, but it also provides this color. To my knowledge, it does not fade. There was a question that came out of the meeting last week, and as a follow-up, because the maintenance noted how to take care of the stainless and, if need be, wipe it down with a certain material. The same applies to the glass. It can simply be wiped clean. If we have a rainstorm and it spots up, it could be cleaned. But it shouldn't experience extreme fading. And if there is any fading, it would be uniform. But I've seen this glass now show up in a few installations around the Bay Area, and I think it's become popular because it is durable and it is easy to maintain.
Okay.
One of the things that we liked about the glass was the play of the natural light out there, and the fact that, again, the artist actually said something interesting in our meeting last week. He said that the overcast or gray or foggy day will actually do more with the lighting of the glass. He said it's just a unique thing about it is just that kind of even gray light will actually help as opposed to bright sunlight. So I'm anxious to see how that works. But having said that, we liked it because of the openness of the glass, and it gives the sense of movement throughout the day, and the sculpture's changing throughout the day, even though it's a fixed sculpture, so we don't have to worry about moving parts breaking and all of that sort of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
I just have one comment. I think it's spectacular. I really like his design and how he incorporated with what the building is going to be. And I've also seen some of this glass used in other sculptures at the Papa John's Sculpture Park in Des Moines, Iowa. They have a kaleidoscope that you
Okay.
walk in and you can mirror like that, which is really cool. I think it's really, really clean. And it's going to be, like you said, when people walk down there on the Bay Trail, it's really going to add to our marina.
I concur. Again, going back to some of his early examples, which I went through pretty quickly, you can see the different play and how now he's got a different variety of the glass colors, where he's more limited to our natural, or the colors that will blend in with the natural landscape in and around the marina building. But again, just kind of, you can see here the glass in the sculpture, but then you can see what it does on the ground. And that was one of our talking points last week, was by putting this circular ground, whether it's a crushed granite or what have you, decomposed granite, we'll have those shadows play off the ground as well. So there's a recent, it wasn't his work, but there's a recent series of these glass panels installed at the new parking garage on 101 at Marsh Road in Menlo Park. So they took a monolithic concrete wall and they just lined these fins of glass along the side. And I live down that way, so I have the opportunity to drive by it. And at different times of the day, you look over and it's like, is the side of the building on fire? Because that's how much the glass is radiating. So it's really neat if you get the chance to drive by. But that's what we'll have here at the front of the building, or the bay side of the building.
Any other commissioners? Right. Our recommendation is to make a recommendation, right? No? Okay, perfect.
Don't we need to go through a motion that we recommend, that we pass our recommendation up to the city council?
I don't think so, because it just goes from the public arts group to city council.
No, it's supposed to go through Parks and
Okay.
Rec.
Okay.
If I remember, Bonnie, help me out
Right.
here. If I remember the
That's
way
what
we
they
wrote
said.
the
Okay.
Okay.
The
So-
ordinance.
implementation guidelines,
Okay.
I think we're supposed to do a formal
Right.
Okay.
motion.
Okay.
So I move that we approve this proposal for public art, and that we recommend to the city council to approve it as well. I don't know. Is that close enough? You can get something out of that?
I'll second it.
Okay.
All opposed?
Like,
All, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, I had to throw a curveball there.
Yeah.
Make sure it was awake. Thank you very much for your presentation.
I want to thank, excuse me, the Parks and Rec
Radio.
Commission for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you. Thanks for coming down.
All right, next on the agenda is aquatics.
It's cute.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Franco. I am a Recreation Coordinator for the City of Brisbane Parks and Rec, and I am in charge. One of my areas is aquatics. I have this here. So this is going to be a presentation of a review of the programs that we've done and programs that we offer at the pool for 2018. The first program that I'm going to talk about is our swim lesson program. We offer youth and adult swim lessons, group and private. I gave a few numbers. For spring this last year, we offered 3 4-day sessions. It was on Sundays, and we had 120 participants. That program was 57% full. For summer, we vastly expand our swim lessons. We offer 8 one-week sessions, Monday through Thursday, as well as 2 5-day sessions for Saturdays during the summer. And we had 741 participants, and that was 70% full. And then for the fall, we had 2 4-day sessions on Sundays. So for September and October, we had 95 participants for that, and that was 82% full. People even ask for more lessons after that, going into November, December, but from previous years, we had very low enrollment, so it's nice to keep them wanting more, and then hopefully our next spring swim lessons are more full than this past year. One thing I'm going to change different that I noticed from this year is for our 2 lowest levels, our starfish, which is our beginning swim lessons level, and our seahorse. All of our ratios currently are 1 instructor to 6 students. For those 2 classes, we are going to lower it to 1 instructor to 4 students and to improve the quality. And then I will be offering more swim lessons next summer to kind of even out the numbers. The goal being to also try to make the lessons that more full, like that more percentage of capacity. One of our other big programs at the pool is pool parties. We offer 2 different variety of pool parties that are during rec swim, and during the dates of April 21st through November 4th, almost every single weekend day had a pool party scheduled. 54 in total during that time. And then private pool parties during July 7th and September 8th. We had 14 private pool parties. That was every Saturday and then a few Sundays, pretty much for the whole summer and into fall. Other aquatics programs that we offer are, that first picture is a busy rec swim, and when it gets warm, our rec swims get busy, and when it gets as hot as it can, like, we definitely hit capacity. We also offer water aerobics, which is the top right picture, as well as aqua zumba, and throughout the year, those classes average about 10 participants a class. So even in the colder months, we do have some very dedicated water aerobic participants. The bottom picture is our lap swim. We have quite a few regular lap swimmers. We have a lot of lap swimmers that like to come when the weather gets a lot warmer and the pool gets very busy. But even in the colder months, we have a very strong contingency of lap swimmers here at the pool. Other youth programs that we offer are our Piranha Swim Club, that used to be swim team, but it's tailed off a little bit. But just this fall, we've built up numbers. We didn't have the numbers in summer, so we had spring, and then we have higher numbers in fall. We have about 15 kids. And the plan for next summer is, instead of doing weekday mornings, which a lot of people didn't seem to have time for, we're going to move it to the afternoons, maybe around 5, 6 o'clock, time that it'll be also during the evening swim lessons. So if they could have kids in younger swim lessons as well as kids that are ready for swim team or swim club, to hopefully raise numbers for next summer. We also have, last summer we had a junior lifeguarding camp, which had 6 kids, and the plan is to expand and do potentially 2 or 3 weeks of the camp, and then market it a little bit farther reach, because the 6 kids in the camp did get a lot out of it, and they learned a lot about teamwork and lifeguarding. And that picture is on the Friday of that camp. They were part of our staff training, so they had learned all the skills that lifeguards go through in their lifeguard training, so they were on par to practice all the skills right alongside the certified lifeguards. Another program is our lifeguard certification training classes. We offer those twice a year, and a lot of the people that go through those classes then go on to become lifeguards hired on our staff. Special events at the pool. We had dive-in movies. This past year, our spring dive-in movie got canceled due to rain, but the previous year we had 3 dive-in movies, and then we just had one a couple weeks ago in October, E.T., and it was a pretty cold night. It didn't rain, but it was our lowest number of people at about 30. We've averaged about 50 to 60, and a lot of people enjoy the movie, but I do think we need to move them a little sooner into the fall. But moving forward with dive-in movies, I've talked with my counterpart, recreation coordinator Ricardo, and we're going to work with the Yak and make a dive-in movie geared towards teens, because that's the age group that I think would enjoy it the most. So we're going to kind of work together and try to build it and make it even bigger than it has in the past. Next special event is we had the 3rd annual Underwater Pumpkin Patch this year. We had about 180 people attend, and this year, like the first year we had it, it was a very hot day, and about half the people knew about the event. Last year, I would say about 75% of the people knew about the event, but the special thing about this year, I'd say everybody that came were there because of the special event. So it's definitely growing, has a lot more reach. So it will be happening again next year, and I plan to expand and not just, maybe we'll actually make the pumpkins sink so they'll be underwater. We also had a few pop-up special events over the summer. I had a head lifeguard in charge of coordinating, and we bought ice cream and fruit bars and just offered them for sale for $1 out the back door of the pool office. So just a kind of day of, we didn't market that, we just surprised people and said, hey, we have ice cream for you guys or fruit bars, and that was a big success. So something we'll definitely be expanding on for next summer. Here's a couple pictures from the Underwater Pumpkin Patch. and then a picture from the dive-in movie. There's, in the foreground, you can kind of see a lot of people on the pool deck as well. So we have people on the deck as well as in the water. Any given time of year, my aquatic staff is as low as about 20 to as big as about 40, and they are a very tight-knit group, and they all get along quite well together. I started in February of 2016, and I still have quite a few of the staff that were here when I first started, so we have a very good staff retention. In this picture, they were all interlocked arms, and they were doing a melody of, I think it was Motorboat, and I thought it was only going to go over one time, and then they'd be like, okay, let's move on to the next thing. But they did it probably 5 times in a row, and they kept going around in a circle and ended up in the deep end. So they had a lot of fun on something that I figured they're not going to enjoy this. Like, what else am I going to do next to take up some time? So it really showed their camaraderie working together. I think this may have been mentioned at a previous meeting, but one of the trainings this past summer, we were lucky enough to have a guest trainer, Pete DeQuincy from East Bay Regional Parks. I've known him for the past probably 15 years professionally, and he goes around probably nationally and does trainings, and he also works on the American Red Cross board, and he helps tweak and make updates to the lifeguard class. He's definitely one of the big names in aquatics. So I have to check my calendar, but I think we already have him locked in for next year too. The staff, after that training, wanted to try to mimic that training style for the rest of the summer. So we kind of tried to move on and curtail some of his techniques and tactics. And then in closing, I wanted to also just mention that on top of everything that we provide, we also collaborate with Lippman Middle School and provide space and programs for them as well. So the junior lifeguarding after-school club is taught by the aquatic staff. That's Wednesdays in the fall and spring. And then the swim club is led by Lippman staff, which is for swim instruction and then fun for the kids. That's on Fridays, fall and spring. And then in the fall as well as the spring, they do PE classes as well. So it really connects, like, 'cause since we're right next to the middle school, they definitely take a lot. I mean, they use the pool as often as they can. And at this time, is there any questions you might have?
I do have a few questions for you.
Yes.
On the very first slide, you talked about swim lessons.
Yeah.
Do you have a breakdown of percentages of youth versus adult swim lesson participants? You talked about the number of participants per spring, summer, and fall, but do you have a breakdown of the age groups?
I don't have a breakdown. Currently, we just have private lessons for adults, and they're in the mornings. Okay. I can get that number for you guys.
Just curiosity there on that one.
I would say,
on the pool parties,
yes.
are those mostly geared towards younger children pool parties, or there are adult pool parties as well?
Mostly geared towards younger children, but we have had like teen pool parties or graduation parties. One of my staff had a 18th birthday private party, so it kind of depends on the crowd or who wants to have one, but I would say it's definitely all ages that have taken part.
Okay. And just, you talked about the pumpkin patch that's in the fall. It came to my mind, what about a watermelon patch, 4th of July timeframe, summer timeframe, is an idea? Because you talked about it was a good success in the winter months, maybe, pumpkin patch, watermelon patch, but just a thought.
I'm always looking for, to build on the success of the events and to have events other times of the year. Definitely something to think about.
Other comments, questions?
Yeah, through the chair. I also wanted to ask a little bit about the pool parties. So this is people renting the pool for a pool party?
So there's two different types. The type during rec swim, they rent essentially the gazebo in the back, so they have it exclusively for them. And then there's two different types, but they can have half of rec swim or all of rec swim, and they, with whichever package, includes so many participants to the pool party. So they get the space and then a slightly discounted amount of people, and then currently our staff also provide 20 to 30 minutes worth of games for the kids. And then the second option would be after rec swim, they could rent the whole facility for just their pool party.
Right, so in the first, I'm going to get around to what we charge for that. So in the first scenario, the pool is open. You block off half the pool. They get space up on the deck for their party, and they just pay entrance for that, and it's a reduced entrance. Talk to me about the financial.
We don't block off any of the pool for them. Their pool party is during rec swim. So
Okay.
they get the sole area of the gazebo, so
Right.
that's rented privately for them. And then otherwise, it's just they're part of rec swim, but they have that area, so they don't have to come, first first serve for it.
Got it. And we charge them for that.
Yes.
Is it a large? What's the rates for that?
The fee for one I can think of off the top of my head for non-residents for the gold package, which is all of rec swim for up to, and they can have up to 40 people, it's $284. So it's pretty reasonable. And I think those prices just went up with the master fee schedule, so they'll be a little bit higher for next year.
And if I remember your slide, that's the majority of the rentals.
The majority of are the gold party, actually, because even if people don't stay the whole rec swim, they like having the gazebo solely for themselves and just the time slot where another party won't come in before or after them.
And then when they rent the whole pool, what does that cost?
That is it's broken down by 0 to 50 people, 51 to 100, and then 100 to 200. So I want to say for 0 to 50 for non-residents, I think
It's
breaks
like
down to
400.
it's like $90 an hour or $105 an hour or maybe $130 an hour for 100 to 200. And most people rent for 2 to 3 hours. So anywhere from $200 to $400.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I just have a comment. I've been to, my kids take the aquatic lessons here. We've been to the pumpkin and all the other events, and everybody raves about it, and we've heard positive things from other people outside, like our family. So we just want to say you're doing a great job, especially your staff being on top of the kids, stop running, and especially basically emphasizing safety in the pool.
Thank you.
So
I would agree with that. Having been at the pumpkin dive, and that was pretty fun. The boys loved it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
All right, moving on to old business, day in the park discussion.
So this was just as a follow-up to this year's Day in the Park in October. The commission requested to bring this back as an entire commission versus a subcommittee to have some dialogue and conversation about how the event went this year and make any recommendations or changes for next year's event. So
I think it turned out really well. It was a big crowd. We kept doing tickets and more tickets and more tickets because they were buying the $20 packs. And I thought that the pie eating contest was fun. So I think most people really enjoyed it. They stayed most of the day.
That's consistent with the feedback that we got too, and even just my own experience with our kids. Everything from the derby through the pie eating contest, and just I think just the setup with the various vendors were great. The only I think thing that we got feedback on was like one of the vendors either ran out of food or closed early, and then I think the demand for it resurged after maybe they had closed. But overall, it was just a good feedback that we received.
Do we have any statistics on ticket sales and things like that year over year. Was there a notable increase in ticket sales? About the same?
Yeah, we shared some of that information with the commission at the last meeting as far as how many tickets were collected for the various attractions, and it's pretty much in line with the last couple of years. So
If I may, through the chair, I heard some feedback that they would have liked some covering out in the green area for people to sit down so they could eat lunch. That area was just so vacant and so open that it wasn't utilized as much. I heard different stuff about the setup in the back. Some people liked it, some people didn't like it, and some people still felt disconnected when they were on the street. Some of the other vendors. So, like I say, you're not going to please everyone, and we try our best to arrange it as we can. But it's still, we had a lot to compete with that day. There was a lot of stuff going on in the surrounding area. And every year we kind of have a decline in attendance. So I don't know what we can do to bring that back. Maybe we can bring the circus back. Other events. But
I had also heard that the what do they call the community service groups, the police department, and who were down on the pavement, that they felt a little bit detached. And I went down and did some group photographs of them and had some conversations. And it strikes me that we're kind of stuck in sort of this middle place where to put everything. There's too much to put everything up in the park, and yet there's not really enough to fully spread out onto the pavement, and then have it feel full. And I don't know what the solution is, but I did think about this. I thought this, in previous years as well. It's nice to have the big open space in the park on the lawn. I think it would be a really idea worth looking into, to have a big open tent that sits right adjacent to where the food services are and adjacent to where the alcohol is being served, with a half dozen or a dozen picnic tables, because really, at least for guys like me, with not much hair, you're looking for shade. You're looking for a place to sit in the shade, and doing something like that in that position would give a place for people to sit while they can still see their kids out playing close by and hop up when the pie eating contest happens. They're really, I think that having a gathering place that has shade would help keep people there longer, would make people stay there longer, would make them stay for lunch and so on. So that would be my one observation about a potential improvement for next year.
I agree with you. We had that in the years past. Remember, Bonnie?
Right.
When we used to have that. So, and people did stay, sat and ate their lunch.
Yeah, we do provide shade for all the vendors. You would have to. You can't just, and it's the same for the participants. If you're kind of just wandering around for, you're 15 minutes in the sun, it's time to find shade. And if you have that central area, then that creates a gathering point, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Any other comments? Thank you. Moving on, old business, Commissioner's Workshop report out.
I'm looking at Natalie.
I have my notes. So we attended myself, Kevin, and Renee, we've attended the San Mateo County Parks and Rec Commissioners Workshop in, is that San Carlos and Belmont, on October 20th, and we had about 4 presenters. So the first presentation was basically about promoting trust in a device world. And it was basically presented by Dr. Frank, who basically presented on ideas on how to promote trust, seeking buy-in, how to have authentic conversations. And then the next presentation was making the ADA work for everyone. That was presented by Tim Gilbert, who's an architect. And he discussed a lot of of the code compliance, the ADA, and basically what the ADA is keeping in mind vision, mobility, hearing, cognitive and emotional, those things basically as part of the ADA guidelines. One of the examples he used was basically pools, needing a lift or a ramp, and then also for parks, picnic tables and park benches. So all that basically keeping in mind for parks or pools. The next presentation was called The Master Plan Journey, presented by Jeff Ferber, who is a landscape architect. His current project is basically the San Mateo Central Park, which I believe it's going through the process and the development plan right now. I think that project is about, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin and Renee, I think it's about $35 million, like a huge renovation for that park. So he was going through basically the thoughts and the plans that are basically going into that. The last presentation was on stories from the trenches, best practices, presented by Kevin Miller, Cliff Robbins, and Mary Beer. I had to take off, so I don't know if Kevin and Renee, if you guys wanted to discuss what that presentation.
Yeah, I would just say about the whole. First of all, about the whole thing, that I really enjoyed it. It was very, very interesting to hear the presentations, and the last bit, stories from the trenches, was amusing. Mostly, they were funny stories, and a little reassuring. That this is sometimes a difficult job. You don't always you stub your toes on unexpected things, and that also was, I think, reassuring as a commissioner to hear those things. Renee?
Yes, and it was really good because one of the topics too they talked about is how we're working well with staff. And that was a great inspiration. We'll talk. And Dr. Frank, the first presentation, he was tremendous. He was really good. It was a very good workshop. I wish you all could have enjoyed it and gone.
And I believe that they're planning on doing this annually. Is that? We don't know.
No, this actually came up by Brisbane's request when Natalie and Sharon and David all came on board, and they had inquired as to whether or not there was something like this that they could attend and kind of get their feet wet a little bit. And so I went to the administrators, the Park and Rec directors group, and said, hey, what about this? And they said, oh, we did something like that a long time ago, but it's been a while, so let's do it. I don't think it will be an annual thing, but we haven't met since. We meet in December, so we'll debrief on it. But I would assume that so far the feedback I've heard from the other directors has been very positive, and their commissioners really appreciated the opportunity. So my assumption would be maybe every couple of years as new commissioners come through the various commissions. So
I think it's a really valuable thing. We're just citizens. We volunteer to do this, and there's no formal training for it. You kind of learn as we go along, and just to sit there and hear the stories and get those presentations, it gives you some sense of context, or some sense of what it is that we're about and what we should do. I found it very valuable, and I've been doing this for a while. I certainly wish I had something like that when I was brand new at it. So I thought it was very valuable.
And also, I think it was well attended. There were about
Yes.
50 people there.
yeah.
All over from Park and Rec And then also we've exchanged little chalk skis with cities. And I mentioned that South San Francisco had a bunch of giveaways or promo items, so it was nice to see all those free items. But also there was a break in between where you can actually talk to other commissioners about any issues or, things that they've gone through, like a lawn. I think Kevin and we were talking to the San Mateo commissioner about lawn for, what was it? A lawn for their baseball field.
Yeah.
And
He told a great story about fake lawn.
yeah, versus real lawn.
And how that ended up being kind of a bad thing. And we had gone through that with a dog park not too long ago.
Thank you all. Thank you, staff, for taking the suggestion and making action against it. We appreciate that. Very insightful, to say the least.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, moving on to new business, volleyball court policy.
All right, so as you all know, the construction on the sand volleyball courts was completed kind of midsummer this last year. And as with all of our facilities, especially those that we rent out, we have use policies in place for them. So it was time to bring a draft use policy for the volleyball courts to the commission for their review. The purpose of the policy is really just to ensure the safety of our patrons and protect the city against any issues stemming from the use of its facility. At this time, we have drafted a use policy as well as the corresponding documentation, including an application for accepting facility reservations at the volleyball courts. We also, staff, unfortunately, Ricardo was going to present this to you tonight, but he got pulled in another direction for a different program. So, but he did some research as to other volleyball court facilities in different cities, both nearby. There's not a whole lot, as well as Southern California, because there are more down there. And so what we did was we kind of looked at the fees of those facilities and compared them to what we charge for picnic rentals and tried to kind of land it at where we think might be a happy medium. But we would also like the commission to weigh on that, because we would be asking city council to make an amendment to the master fee schedule to impose an hourly rental rate for the sand volleyball courts as well. So what you have in front of you, flipping through the documentation, first is the volleyball court use guidelines, and this is modeled after our picnic rental policy. Under letter A, all of that verbiage is the same as we use for our other facilities. Under B, the numbers that are specific to volleyball court use policies are 4 through 15. And they just talk about what the general rules and expectations of facility use are. We included the hours of the facility, asking our patrons to refrain from loud noise, prohibiting smoking in the area, and so forth. And then also noted where parking and restrooms are located for the potential renter. And then the second document in there is the volleyball court permit policy draft. Again, a lot of this language is consistent with what we have in our other facility use guidelines and permit policies for rental facilities. One thing that I would like to draw attention to that we'd like for the commission to consider is under C, timeline for application. We made the decision to propose that applications for the sand volleyball court could be filled up to 6 months in advance, or filed, up to 6 months in advance for community groups, organizations, and residents, and up to 4 months in advance for non-residents. Again, that could be changed based on the commission's pleasure. And then the rest of the language there is consistent. The next page is the fee schedule and map. What we have proposed there is a $25 per hour rental rate for each court with a 2-hour minimum, and a 20% increase for non-residents, so it would be $30 per hour per court with a 2-hour minimum. And then lastly is the draft permit application that a potential renter would complete and submit in order to apply to use the sand volleyball courts. at this time, I give you the floor if you want to have any conversation about the draft policy or propose any amendments or changes before we take it to City Council.
I did have just a couple of questions. First of all, has there been any community interest in renting it?
So far, what we have been telling people is that because we don't have a use policy in place, that it's just open to the public to use on a first come, first served basis. We have been approached by 2 athletic departments for local colleges who have a desire to use the courts as their home field or home court for their women's volleyball teams.
And would we carve out a special arrangement for them?
Potentially.
Rental and so on?
Potentially,
Which
yes.
which would be different than this?
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
And then the other thing, this was put in at their expense, a volleyball club, which uses it only during a very specific period of time in the mid-summer to September.
Yes.
And we're communicating with them what those cutout periods are, because obviously we can't be renting it to anybody else. How do we monitor that?
We have a use agreement in place with SF Elite Volleyball Club, and they're the ones who donated
Right.
the courts themselves. So the use policy specifies their terms of use during that summer period, where they're able to use the courts for so many hours per week, free of charge. And the remainder of the year outside of their term, if they elected to use the courts, they would either use them on a first come, first served basis, or they would have to reserve them.
Okay.
Through the chair, will that conflict with this women's volleyball?
No. So the 2 colleges that have approached us are USF and the Academy of Art. The Academy of Art actually uses Mission Blue softball field as their home field, and their seasons are in spring. The nice thing about their seasons too is that they'd just be using it for practices, which are during the week, during the day, and so it would not conflict with weekend use of the Mission Blue Center when we have large reservations there, as far as parking is concerned.
And is there any idea what sort of fees would be involved in an arrangement with either of the 2 colleges?
We have not had those conversations with them yet, just that a use policy and a hourly rental fee is coming down the pipeline, and then we would have some sort of negotiation with them if we were to enter into an agreement with them.
And is there? So let's say that both colleges use it. We work that out, and then there's some interest in rental, and it's getting a fair amount of traffic, and that's nice for the city because that's revenue that comes in, and we didn't have to put up any money. But what about the ongoing maintenance of it as a facility? It's sand blows out with the wind and so on. What, if we get a lot of increased usage, who's responsible for that?
The nice thing about it is that it is a fairly low maintenance facility. It's just sand, and we are working with SF Elite. They have offered to maintain it during their term of use, but again, it's very low maintenance. It's just raking and monitoring, like the mesh netting surrounding the perimeter. Yes, it gets very windy up there at Mission Blue, but we haven't had huge winds, and we haven't really gone through a winter season. Right. So it's kind of like let's see what happens during the winter season and what maintenance will really require. For now, Ricardo has just been maintaining them, and he goes up there weekly and checks on them and rakes if needed and removes any garbage if there's any garbage there. But for the most part, it's been very minimal. So I anticipate that if we do get a more substantial amount of use, that we may want to consider additional amenities like placing garbage cans up there and having regular garbage service, maybe having some seating, whether it be like a picnic bench or of some sort. But again, that's something that we could address down the line once we assess what the use impacts are.
Would you put a designated area so this would be posted for people who might be wanting?
Yes, we're working with our planning department to put in a posting board similar to that we have at the picnic areas, so that people can see when there are reservations and they're not disappointed when they show up and they're unable to use them. So we would have a system in place for publicizing when reservations would be occurring.
I have a comment. So I have two kids that play volleyball, one beach and indoor, and beach is very popular in the Bay Area. It's picking up. I know one of the courts are in Ocean Beach is one of them that's close by, and then Brisbane. When that picks up as far as like maintenance, like summertime, I would probably like strongly advise like with, you know, maintenance of that, like in case there's like glass and, you know, because that's the biggest thing, especially like with parents and stuff.
Yeah.
But, and then garbage disposal and recyclables.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on the policy, use policy? Questions?
I like the fees. I think they're very reasonable.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, and I think I'll be booked up quick.
Maybe as part of the work you guys do with USF or Academy of Arts, to your point, maybe they can, some arrangement can be made for donations for whether it's benches or trash cans or things like that.
Yeah, Ricardo actually suggested, well,
Yeah.
if they want to use the courts, let's get them to throw in some amenities to, you know, make the facility even better. So,
Yep.
And I will say too that we met with USF and they even offered to implement opportunities to get more involved in the Brisbane community, and they offered to run a volleyball camp out there or do some clinics, or loan their staff to support our volleyball program. So they were really collaborative in their approach, and so that's very exciting too.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Yeah, definitely. Didn't know it was on the rise. That's good to know. The beach volleyball is on the rise in Northern California.
Seems to be the trend, so it's good timing for us.
And it's not just girls volleyball, it's boys
Yeah.
volleyball that's picking up really
Yeah.
quick here.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Anything else? So you want any someone's got to raise a motion about whether the commission's going to accept the use policy, to pass it on? Anyone?
I'll make a motion.
I'll make a motion to pass the policy as defined.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Also, new business, the 2019 Commissioner Calendar.
So in your packets, we included the commission calendar from 2018. And I figured that we could work off of that for creating our 2019 calendar for the commission. I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit about how this schedule felt for you this past year. We incorporated the program presentations this year and more event debriefs. But compared to years past, I think it helped as far as agenda development to have some of these items already kind of allocated towards specific months so that we had a better flow overall. But I'm certainly open to suggestions if there's anything that you wish to change or shuffle around for the coming year.
So from my perspective, the presentations are very helpful to understand kind of the impact that the Park and Rec Commission is having on the Park and Recs themselves, the facilities, the programs, and the impact on the people that are enjoying them. That's, I think, was very beneficial to hear the success as well as what needs to get better for the programs and facilities that we oversee and help to make recommendations for. So I appreciate that, that I want to see more of. I guess in the presentations for 2019, it's kind of is looking at January, which is right now blank. What I guess for me is to understand how we're doing on our top list of items that we're doing, kind of a recap of, to set the stage for 2019, where we need to go, what we need to look at, what are the items on us, is what I would see to set up. And then I would see some presentations from the YAC would be good to see. I know we've heard from them quite often. That's something that's come back around. Those would be nice to see sometime throughout the year 2019 as appropriate for that. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Through the chair, I had two thoughts or questions. We have February master fee schedule and budget. We are going to, in 2019, we are going to be at the beginning of a new budget cycle. I've lost track a little bit.
We did budget this year.
For a 2-year cycle.
That's correct.
Okay.
So this coming year, 2019, would be the capital improvements that we would do.
Discuss.
Yes.
And then also in the April meeting, we have new commissioners and subcommittee assignments. I think the way we did it this last year is we had the new commissioners come in and spend one meeting before we did subcommittee reassignments, just for them to sort of get their bearings. The idea being that if you're a new commissioner in your first meeting, you've got to kind of, decide which subcommittee. Is that something that we should make a policy? Because of the way it's currently done, that's all happening at the same meeting. Or am I misreading that?
No, you are not misreading that. And that is what we did last time. And I don't think anybody's term is up next year. I think it might be 2020 the next time we have new commissioners. So we won't really have that this coming year, if I'm correct, and everybody's still on until 2020. So it would just be subcommittee reassignments if there was a desire to shuffle those. But I think for the following year that we would want to separate those and let new commissioners get one meeting under.
And it would be worth us, even though we're all on a term set through this next year, to revisit committee assignments in case people wanted to
try something
different or move over or whatever.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I guess based on that, Kevin, it came to mind to me again that no one is going to be, their term will be up next year. Would it make sense to move up subcommittee assignments sooner in the year, say in February, so that you had more time on different committees throughout the year than waiting till April? As a thought to move that action, a part of the calendar, to move it up.
Then what will we do in April?
I'm sure we'll find something.
We can find things.
Well, no, I see the logic behind it, and what I'm
Sure.
trying to think about is the cycle of some committees which have a yearly cycle. For example, Concerts in the Park. If there was a shift in April, well, Concerts in the Park is really kind of already potentially up and running and having their meetings. But if we did committee reassignments in February and somebody shifted into Concerts in the Park, then you'd be at the beginning of that cycle. And I don't know whether that's sensitive to any of the other committees that are cyclical like that. So is there logic to what you're suggesting?
I think that there is, but my logic is, again, as soon as, in my mind, it's a new year, just as soon as we can start at the new year to help things. But again, if people have desires now and thoughts, I guess, we don't have to set the calendar for 2019 tonight, correct? Right?
No.
So my thoughts are to take that thought about going away when we meet back in December, think about, does that make sense to move it up sooner in the year so that when we come back from the new year, we're fresh and excited and maybe want to try something new or stay where we were doing. So that's my thought.
All right.
New year, new you.
Through the chair, we didn't do an off-site facility tour, did we, in June?
We did not do it this year, no.
So I would really love to do stuff like that, because I don't even, until recently, didn't know where even all the parks were.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that would be kind of cool.
Yeah. I think a few other field trips throughout the year might be helpful. Again, different times of the year make sense and make different. In my mind, I think that if all goes well with the public art installation, that a tour definitely in the springtime to see the facilities and seeing the art installation might be a wonderful thing to do. Absolutely, I agree with that. So I would definitely think, we visited the marina last year from a subcommittee meeting, but I think from an overall, larger, it would be good to get out. So yeah, again, I think we've got this draft here of what we did this year, and I think we have some time to think on it, and we can put more together next month about what we want to do. But those ideas are good. I think that the more involvement we have for understanding where all the parks are and what they look like, because again, I too have experienced and gone places like, oh, I didn't know this was here kind of thing, and it's refreshing to see and do. So, other thoughts, questions?
I agree with Sharon
Yep.
entirely. And the couple of on-site subcommittee meetings that I've been on, it just makes,
Yeah.
it helps you to discuss it if you've been there and seen it. So
Yeah, very eye-opening. If you can see and touch and taste things, it makes a totally difference. So,
One question or thought I had relative to whether it's Day in the Park or any other event like concerts in the park, etc., is whether or not it'd be worthwhile to have just a kind of commissioner's booth just to actively solicit feedback from the community when we're actually in the community, because depending upon clearly timing, we don't get very many visitors, but if we go to where the traffic is, I'm sure we might get feedback and new ideas and thoughts. So just a thought.
That's a good idea.
good idea, but having no more than 3 of us in the booth, no more than 2 of us in the booth at the same time.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, figure out how but
Add to
just
the Brown Act.
Yes, there you go.
We'll work in pairs. Right?
that's great.
Good idea.
Okay. There's 6 of us. All right.
There's 7 of you.
There is 7.
One of us will just
You know.
be alone.
Take shifts. We can
Yeah.
figure it out. It's all good. It's just an idea, just to maybe for my calendar perspective to.
I was just thinking about what you were saying, Lyle, about the field trips. January. We have nothing in January.
It's true.
Phil,
It's so cold outside.
fill January out then. No, you're absolutely right. If there's something that makes sense for us to do because again, most of the facilities, when we've gone to see facilities, we're using the light, but there are indoor facilities we have as well, and potentially an indoor facility, it might be helpful. So, any other thoughts about the calendar? So we'll put that as something to revisit in next meeting to work through it. So have some homework for everyone to go home and think on this and sleep on it. All right. Any other thoughts or questions on the calendars? Okay. Moving on to reports. Chairperson report. That is I. Don't have anything other than a report that I'm back safe from my travels and I'm here. That's it. Subcommittee reports. We'll start with Festival of Lights. Subcommittee report.
Renee, you want to do that?
It should be fresh in your mind. We just met
Exactly.
2 hours ago.
I'm trying to find the paper. Where's the paper you just gave me? We're going to have quite this exciting event for Festival of the Lights. We're going to start at 5:45 with Caroline coming down visitation, and we got some really cool lights. Last year we gave out hats, Santa hats. This year we're giving out Christmas tree light necklaces. So all the carolers will have that. They're going to come down. You want me to give them a whole brief of what we're doing? Okay. Kathy Wall is going to start off with a song. We are going to have the Brisbane Dance Workshop dancers perform. We're going to have Sarah's group from the Park and Rec Department, the children from the BES school, the Park and Rec program, after school program. They are going to perform. We're going to have the woman that started the whole Festival Lights, Jerry Sully, who has composed a special song, and she is going to sing it for us. Santa will come and light the tree. We got a brand new, big-sized light switch that's going to light the tree. We have the snow globe. We have crafts. We have Santa taking pictures. Sharon's got this great idea with her computer camera. that is going to take instant pictures, and we're going to put them in envelopes and give them to the parents. We are going to have snow on the lawn.
Yes.
And cookies and hot chocolate, and it's going to be quite the event.
Snow on the lawn,
And
yeah.
it is
yes.
December 2nd, Sunday, 5:45. Well, everybody knows it's the first Sunday. So light your stars. Everybody needs to light their stars. Did I do it?
That was good. And
Mhm.
Renee's gonna MC.
Yes.
Okay, anything else for the report?
I think Kevin just wants to clarify about
The snow on the lawn. You sort of left it in there.
It's fake
No.
snow. It's not real snow. Let's set the expectation. I don't want everybody coming expecting real snow.
Making snow
Okay.
angels in the.
It's pretend snow.
Biodegradable pretend snow?
See?
Yeah.
There we go. No, I'm just kidding.
It's snow. So everybody come and have a wonderful time. It's going to be quite the event. And Tim Chang is going to light our tree again.
Thank you very much, Renee.
Here.
Next, we'll hear from Recreational Facilities Subcommittee.
And that's going to be me, and I have a pile of different notes here. Ones that Noreen provided, which I'll use, but I also wrote some of my own. This was a very good meeting. We discussed a lot of issues about how to spend monies that were passed by the City Council as per our request in the last budget cycle. Let's see, we started out with a discussion of the sunrise room improvements, and we did a survey with the seniors to see what their wishes were. And then the top two things that they were interested in is replacing the carpet, and then secondly, a new couch. And there was a fair amount of conversation about the new couch, and that the couch needs to not be too low to the ground, and this has to do with seniors being able to navigate getting up in and out of the couch. The other things that were on that survey were updating kitchen cabinets, replacing baseboards, a welcome desk, new tables and chairs, and interior paint, which all had some interest in it. But the two large ones were replacing the carpet and the new couch. But also, what came up in that survey, in the comments section, was new chairs for the community center, and it came up with enough frequency that while it was not on our agenda, we thought it was something that, and we don't have money in the budget necessarily for it, we thought it was something that we should consider. So the conversation as we went through the different budget items were, would it be possible if we didn't spend all the money in some of the other categories to come up with enough money to get close enough to buying new chairs that we could also include that. And the cost for new chairs, what we were told, is about $2,500. We have, for the sunrise room, we have $10,000 approved by the City Council for improvements. We are wondering if, in replacing the carpet and the new couch, if we just did those two things, whether we would come in under budget so that we could possibly fund these new chairs. Let's see, Firth Park improvements. So we talked about improving Firth Park. This was an on-site, this came from an on-site meeting that we had some time back. And this is where those on-site meetings are so valuable, because you actually see it. It's not an abstract conversation. And we have $8,000 budgeted to replace benches, tables, and trash cans. We looked at different kinds of tables. We came to an agreement of one specific kind, which is recycled plastic, I believe, yeah. Then we moved on to talk about the drop-down screen for Mission Blue, and that is something that we had put on also asked the city for funding. They did fund that to $5,000. This would be a permanent screen in the main section that would replace a portable screen. We have a portable screen It's quite good size. It's quite a pain to put up and break down. We also, in that conversation, said, well, is there a market for selling the old screen to offset some of the costs? I have here in Noreen's notes, work with Sharon, need potential vendor. But we would certainly like to find a way to actually repurpose that and sell that, also with in mind that we're trying to find enough money to pay for new chairs at the community room, which was such a popular thing on the from the seniors thing. Let's see. Update regarding the childcare modular. So this is the new module that's going to go up at Brisbane Elementary School. At the beginning of last season, we found that the current modular was way too small for the need. There is currently a temporary modular, second modular up there to handle that. We have an RFP out. I'm getting a little fuzzy. We have an RFP out for a new modular.
We do, and we actually have a site visit tomorrow with prospective bidders.
Right, but we will go through another school year before that is finally installed. So that would be summer of 2020 when that installation would happen. The new modular is about the same square footage as the two that we have combined. But the one nice thing is that it will actually have a restroom in it, which is a real problem currently, because those after-school programs, those little kids, they've got to march them down to every 15 minutes there's a little group that goes down there. Update regarding the signboard improvements. So we talked about that. We had a quote that came in. Let me see if I put that in my notes here. Yeah, so we went to E-Ink and Digital View. Are those the two companies, the names of the two companies? That's what I have in my...
E-Ink is the creator of the technology, and Digital View.
And Digital View is the company that would install it. And,
yes.
And so we have a quote that's come back from them to do just the signboard here in the city, which is two-sided. And the quote is about $56,000. Is that correct? Yes. That doesn't include what we would need to do up at the ridge, but that is only one side. Our thinking is, of course, if you look at the cost of doing the signboards the way we currently do it, it costs the city about $20,000 a year. So to do both of them, that would easily be amortized within a 4 to 5 year period. The next step for that is to go to a joint subcommittee between our subcommittee and OSEC and get their input from it. And then from there, we'd bring it back to us. How does it get from there to City Council? Because eventually this has to go to City Council. So it would come back to us, and then we would make a recommendation to City Council to move that forward. Upgrade resurfacing at the community park. Oh, yes, this comes back to me. Yes, this is at the playground. The playground surface is now getting old. That play structure has been up for what? 6 years?
2012.
2012. So it is in need of rehabilitation. I have here on the notes that that's happening within the next 2 weeks. Is that correct?
Yes, Public Works is working with a contractor to come out and do that work. It will require that the playground be closed for 24 hours because they'll be resurfacing the deteriorated area primarily by the swings where the poured in place is really kind of coming apart. So they'll patch that, and then they'll put a coating on all of that poured in place surfacing. So our Public Works crew will power wash beforehand, and then when the vendor comes out, they'll they'll patch it and then they'll coat it and then it has to remain closed for 24 hours. So as soon as Public Works has the vendor lined up, we'll advertise and let the public know when the closure will occur.
Right. And then there was one last, a small, in an additional discussion, and that was that the signs for Castaños Canyon and Street are not in accord. One has the Spanish spelling for canyon, which is C-A-N with the tilde over the top of it, O-N, and then the other is the English spelling. And was there one that had the English spelling even with the, I forget, but there's a little inconsistency. And whether we want to push to change that or just list that amongst our little peculiarities of our small town, I guess we didn't really settle that debate.
We didn't settle it. Just an observation.
Yeah. And that's all that I have. Lyle, did you have anything, or
No,
Renee, did you have anything to add to that?
nothing else from me. Covered it quite well. Thank you.
Oh, the one thing about, you didn't talk about the barbecue pits at first.
No, I didn't.
Okay, so the barbecue pits, we were talking about the crate, the grates, because the barbecue pits look pretty good, in pretty good shape still. They pulled the weeds and they kind of cleaned them up, so we're going to just replace the crates, so the grates, so you can do the barbecuing in them, so we don't have to replace the whole thing.
Is that at
Oh,
Firth?
and
Yes.
Firth Park, and find someone to paint the turtle, and I did talk with Lisa Greeley, and she said she'd love to do it. And
I
also,
hope they move it so the kids
yes,
can get on it.
we talked about moving it out.
Yeah, good.
That was brought up too. And I think those were the,
Yeah, that also reminded me of one other sign inconsistency at Firth Park, which is no dogs allowed, and then the
Dog bags.
dog bags, handily accessible, and that we should take the no dogs allowed sign down.
and also to update the Firth Park text at the bottom of the park that's coming into the community, and possibly making that an art project with the community.
Thank you both for that. Next on subcommittees, we have events subcommittee.
I'll speak to that. So first was just kind of an update from a budgetary perspective that we got approved the $6,000 for that. And then really the conversation was around what other events, both events that currently planned. Here you'll see the Parents' Night Out is one of the ones that is happening this Friday, and then on 12/15 in terms of a new event to allow parents to drop off their children and have kind of a date night. And then some of the funding was also allocated to the Festival of Lights. So the sled inflatable, the Santa photo, and then some of the events that are going there. And then we also discussed whether or not we wanted to try to do a event this year in conjunction with that, like a pop-up event for helping make the stars here in Brisbane. We just decided that given the proximity of Thanksgiving, lighting, New Year's, etc., that'll be something we'll seek to coordinate maybe next year, just too short of a notice. We also talked about the trying of a movie night at the park, maybe instead or in conjunction with kind of the dive-ins, just because that might be an opportunity that folks who aren't interested in getting in the water might enjoy trying that as well. And then from kind of a new events perspective, we just discussed kind of other ideas for events that we could leverage the funding for, including some of those maybe in the Jan-Feb timeline. There may be more indoors versus outdoors, just given kind of weather. And then we also talked about the trying a family camp-out night in 2019. I think more in the later spring, early summer as a way to, again, just get the community involved in another type of event. And I shared a little bit about what it was that Panorama did recently at a family camp out there, and similar kind of ideas of how we can do it here. And I believe, Noreen, you shared some of kind of Burlingame like event there as well. And then we also went through just ideas of just quick win events, meaning just very kind of low budget, easy things to put on both at the parks, at the community center, and even potentially like trivia nights or something like that at the Brisbane Inn. So lots of just like great ideas in terms of collaboration between various kind of venues and getting some of these up and running.
Just, I guess, the question for the subcommittee in regards of events, did we consider any events out at the marina?
I think the kite event is an existing one that is reoccurring, but we didn't speak necessarily of any other events out there.
Thank you. Anything else for the subcommittee for events?
Did we didn't get the sled though, right? We tried to get the sled, but it was already rented and they only have one, so unfortunately we'll have to try to get that one for next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next up then is setting subcommittee meetings. So, what meetings need to meet between now and December? Any subcommittees that we know need to? Is there more that we need to discuss on listening to proposals or feedback for any of the facilities that we're investigating? Is there any need to meet for facilities?
The one question that I would have is, are we going to try to schedule a joint subcommittee meeting with Recreation and OSEC to move forward the idea of the signboard?
Yes.
And is that something that we would do before the first of the year?
Yes. I would like to try to do that.
Okay. But that's not a date we can put on the calendar just right now, because...
Yeah, if you want to throw out a couple ideas, then we can go back to the Open Space and Ecology Committee members and see if they work for them. I know in trying to schedule this meeting in the past, Monday evenings and Tuesday evenings were difficult for them. So I would suggest steering clear of those days.
Renee, any days that work for you? Not Monday and Tuesday? '28th or 5th?
5th or 6th works for me. When do they meet? When does OSEC meet as a whole?
I don't know.
They are, because we switched with them. So I believe they are Wednesday the 3rd. It'll be the 2nd.
Yeah.
I think they're the 3rd Wednesday. I'd have to check.
Does November or December? Yeah.
So the 5th would be, Wednesday the 5th would work for them.
I believe so, because that's, yeah.
So 5th and 6th. Going backwards, next week is Thanksgiving.
November 28th works fine with me. The 28th, 29th, or 30th of November.
28th does not work. 29th does work for me.
Let's try the 29th.
Okay.
5.
Wait, the 29th won't work for me, will it? Mission Blue.
Open Space and Ecology does meet the 3rd Wednesday of the month.
No, that works for you.
Wednesday.
29th. It's a Thursday.
Thursday, 29th.
No, but it's not the first or the 3rd Thursday.
Right. The last Thursday.
And the art class will be completed?
Forget when they end. You're right, the next meeting.
Yeah, today's the 15th.
Today's
Well,
the 14th.
How about a couple of days and then we'll Is there any-
5th and the 6th, either the 5th or
So
the 6th.
let's try for the 29th at 5:30, or the 5th at 5:30, and the 6th at 5:30.
Those would all work for me.
There's 3 potential dates.
Okay, we'll put it out to them and then we'll circle back and let you know if any of them work.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Any other subcommittee meetings needing to meet before our next meeting? Anyone? Okay, so we have that subcommittee meeting potentially scheduled. All right. Now, is commissioners, any commissioners have any reports to speak of? Staff report.
You don't have anything? Okay. All right. Tricia doesn't have anything apparently, so I'll jump right in. Just to let the commission know that the next activity guide, the winter spring activity guide, will be out the first week of December. And that will encompass classes and programs from January through May. Registration will open for residents on December 11th and the following Tuesday for non-residents. We did increase our enrollment for our Club Rec after school program. I can't remember whether or not we told you guys that, but we, based on our daily attendance, we found that we were able to enroll the people on the wait list and expand the capacity of the program to 100 because average daily attendance was hovering around 65 or so. And so now we have 91 kids enrolled and average daily attendance is closer to 75, 80. So it's bursting at the seams and doing really well. We have a great team of staff up there, and they've done a lot in the last several months. And so the overall feedback from parents has been very positive, and we're thrilled that we were able to find a place for all of the kids who needed a place to be after school to come and give parents that, reassurance that their child is safe after school. So that's been really great. We do have our winter break camps coming up December 26th through 28th and January 2nd through 4th. So registration is open. We are accepting applications for the Youth Advisory Committee as well. The current term is now coming to a close, and so we're accepting applications for any new interested Youth Advisory Committee members. Just to provide you with an update at Mission Blue, the handrails on the exterior of the building have been sanded, painted, and updated. They look very nice. And the new carpet was installed in both the main room and in the conference room. And it looks really great. So we're excited about that. And then lastly, events coming up. We have, as you know, the first Parents' Night Out coming up on this Saturday. I think we have another 15 spots available for those that are interested. So if anybody's watching out there and you're interested in having your kids come, it's really affordable and it will be a very fun evening for your children. And then the next opportunity for a Parents' Night Out is on December 15th. Also coming up, Festival of Lights, December 2nd. And live at Mission Blue, I'm going to make a plug because we just got the brochures and people will see them in their mailbox. The Live at Mission Blue concert will be held on January 12th, and Artist Evening of Sharing will be held on February 2nd. So save the dates.
Thank you. All right, moving on to commission matters. Written communications. We did receive, the commissioners received a thank you note from Nancy Coleman, the Volunteer of the Year. Very lovely note. We appreciate it very much. All the commissioners have had an opportunity to read it, so I appreciate that. Commission calendar. So we've set one potential subcommittee meeting to set up, and then for the agenda, we're going to come back with the calendar for 2019. Any other items for the agenda?
It'll be after the Festival of Lights, so.
Yeah.
So we'll get a report of the Festival of Lights.
So we'll debrief that, and then we also had a placeholder there for a teen and YAC program presentation. So
Okay.
they'll do a year in brief as well. And depending on the date for the joint subcommittee meeting with Open Space and Ecology, we could potentially also bring the signboards back in December. If not, if it doesn't work out, then it would be January.
Okay. Anything else? All right. I call this meeting adjourned at 8:15.
One time I'm gonna get used to it and I'm not gonna jump out of this chair when you hit that.
Leave these books?
Yes.
The orange books, yes, you can look.